Hey guys, before we start this episode, I just like to say that me and Christos don't support the use of any substances, legal or illegal. We don't condone the use of any narcotics or anything like that. Um, you should always do your research about anything you do with your body, and you shouldn't base it on anything told to you. You should look into it yourself. So, with that being said, hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Top of the morning to you, laddies! Welcome to another episode of the Socially Distant Untitled Podcast. Today I'm your host, Greek PewDiePie, and I'm joined by...
a Slavic PewDiePie.
And today we're reading your submissions to the Socially Distant Untitled Podcast subreddit.
Dude, imagine if there was a subreddit for us. I mean, I'm not saying anything, but...
We would be the only members in that community, dude. We'd be
The
submitting
best
our own
subreddit.
fan art.
That's dangerous. That's for a different website.
Yes.
Well
Then, hello and welcome everyone to the Socially Distant Untitled Podcast. Before we get into today's themes, I need to address a mistake I made as a cool guy in the last episode. You see, when Spencer, our guest, was talking about Apollo 13, I had the wrong poster up. I had the poster up for, I want to say, Apollo the 13th, or Apollo 18, which is a horror movie set in space on Halloween.
It's like
I didn't realize until he was deep into thought that it wasn't that I got the wrong movie, but I think it was because the movie had the tagline of "They were never meant to come back."
Imagine like Apollo 13. Like had that tagline.
No, dude, that's what this movie was. I actually made that mistake. Like, I was watching Spencer speak, and I'm like, dude, we've already screwed up recording like 8 times this episode. I'm not doing it again.
But wait, then the first one you did was fine, so.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, so. Anyways, today.
Let's hop right into it. Dominik, what are we doing?
Well, today we're talking about more of a solemn, serious topic. It's addiction.
I can't get enough of it. I literally can't put it down.
So terrible. Yeah, so we'll be talking about addiction, whether it's to substances or to other things in movies.
Anime.
And yeah, water,
Plastic.
air. It's great.
I mean, have you been able to go more than 5 minutes without breathing? I don't think so, buddy. That's what we call an addiction.
Yeah. Imagine going a day without drinking water.
Oh my god. I'm such a crackhead.
That's it's like teenage girls. Well, yeah, so Christos, would you want to start or should I start?
Actually, I can start. So, the movie that I will be talking about today is a very special movie. Dominik and I have both seen it, and when Dominik was watching it, he kept, like... Okay, we had some technical difficulties in that we don't know who's hosting whenever, so besides the point, us being an idiot aside, the movie I will be talking about today is Uncut Gems, a movie that got snubbed at the Oscars and honestly deserved it more than Joker. But when watching this movie, and it does a really good job of making you feel... Sorry. Oh my god, what? Okay. It does a really good job of making you feel the emotions of the main character. When Dominik was watching it, he had to take several breaks and text me, dude, this movie is making me too anxious. I want to crawl onto a ball and cry. Why don't my parents love me? But the movie deals with a heavy theme of addiction. Over the course of this movie follows a circular theme of storytelling, where a movie ends exactly how it begins. It begins with the same shot, similar shots, one zooming into a gem, one zooming into a colonoscopy. Not in a gem, my bad. But it does a really good job of using this circular storytelling to talk about how addiction destroys lives. Like, over the course of this movie, you see the main character, addiction, put himself in a rough situation in the beginning of the movie. And over the course of the movie, he's constantly fixing it. And there are several times where he does fix it, including the climax of this movie, but his own addiction stops him from just enjoying the life. He's always searching for the thrill of the next big win, and because of that, he can never be satiated. His gambling addiction destroys him, mentally, physically, and emotionally, and has a toll on everyone in his life, not just himself. You can see how it destroys his family. It causes his kids to hate him, his wife to leave him, his brother to just be really disappointed, and his overall family just get destroyed. I should also preface that this movie can be found currently on Netflix, and I think it's a 10 out of 10 movie.
Yeah, I highly agree. And I did some more, like, not research, but I looked more into this movie, like watching video essays and stuff like that. And why I also think is, like, why it portrays the emotions you can feel in, addiction and these disappointing and really sad and scary moments in a person's life, why it portrays them so well, is it's based in reality. Not that it's based on a true event, but a lot of the characters and a lot of the events in the movie are real characters that just would behave that way. They have Kevin Garnett, the basketball player, and this was a very interesting fact that I looked up about the movie. They had to find a basketball player who had 3 games in under what is it called, the tri-state area with Boston, New England, that played 3 New England games, did really good in 2 of them and really bad in 1 of them. And that just happened to be Kevin Garnett playing for the Celtics. So this movie and various characters, in the diamond industry are based in reality, and they are real, and it's shot in a very real way. So you can really experience, like, it's anxious. Like Christos said, I have to step away from the movie saying, I hate this is making me anxious, and then get back to it. So I think it does that through basing it in reality, and you can really feel the main character's pain from, the addiction.
It's not a comedy, and I just have this image of, like, some parent seeing Adam Sandler in a new movie and going, oh, let's take our kids to go watch this. I watched this movie on a date. Could not recommend it as a date movie, but it's a really good movie. Adam Sandler's performance in this is so absolutely amazing. Right? Like, part of what makes this movie so good is the way he speaks, right? He's always speaking super fast because he's always trying to get to the next big win. And, like, the entire time, you just see him, like, grow more and more insane. And Adam Sandler just captures that so perfectly. I mean, there are some points, it's not a comedy, like I said earlier, but there are some points of the movie where you can't just help but laugh at how, like, terrible everything's coming together. And even when he does win, he can't let himself win. He needs to sacrifice it all over again for another shot at an even bigger win. I cannot give this movie enough praise. Something we haven't talked about, that Dominik mentioned actually, is that it does how do I explain this? It does a really good job of being very real in that its cinematography is so drop-dead gorgeous. It really captures the lives of, like, celebrities in the U.S. where you're going to parties, where you have all these, and while the parties may be fun, you have a ton of insecurities and, like, pressures weighing down on you, right? Ultimately, you're drinking and partying like that to forget everything else. It's just absolutely crazy.
Let's go Celtics! But yeah, it's very good, and I think Adam Sandler does an immaculate.
I'm so
job.
mad he didn't get an Oscar for this. I love Joker, back like to the moon and back, but like I could listen to an argument saying that this is a better movie or that it's just that Adam Sandler's performance was better than Joaquin Phoenix's. And that's saying a lot, because like I literally just bought a Joker costume in the mail because I'm bored.
Because you're bored. Because you're bored.
Because we live in a
Shame.
society, but that was our episode 2 episodes ago.
Also, yeah, I was going to say that $8.20 movies just don't get the spotlight.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it several times about how Hollywood is always about making themselves seem best, and how certain companies just keep getting snubbed. Dominik, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think wonderful movie, 10 out of 10. Go watch it right now, or I'll kick your shins with a razor scooter.
I would agree. I don't know if I could recommend it to people who have problems with anxiety, because this movie will make you feel very anxious, and you won't enjoy that. It's for the strong in our society.
Wow, Christos, what are you saying? That people with anxiety don't deserve rights or something like that?
Once again, this movie can be found on Netflix. Dominik, what movie are you talking about, buddy?
Well, I'm glad you asked, partner. The movie I'll be talking about is Trainspotting.
When they finally see the train.
Oh, yeah. When you... Guys, please help out my girlfriend. And my crush says she loves Trainspotting. I don't know what it is. This is more of a traditional sense on, traditional take on addiction. It's about heroin. Well, thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you for coming. That wraps up this episode of the Socially.
It's a really good movie, and I can't recommend it enough. It's about this group of people, this group of heroin addicts, and the stories around their life. It's also tends to be a really serious movie at times and a really funny movie at times, and really cool. It makes you feel cool, like Alien does in that sense. But it talks about addiction in a very interesting way. The main character, not Spud, it's why am I forgetting the one character?
Obi-Wan Kenobi, dear God.
No, it's not Begbie, it's not Spud, it's not Sick Boy. Renton,
yeah.
Renton, right. He goes through he attempts to fight his heroin addiction multiple times, at one point even succeeding. But he's thrown in this culture where all of his friends still take heroin, and 2 will do anything to make money. So there's, towards the ending, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but he does cure his addiction, and he goes sober for a really long time. But then for his friends, he has to take heroin again, in order to make sure this deal, so that they can make a lot of money. So why that's really interesting is because by the time in the movie where he quits heroin, you can really see him have a future. And this movie also discusses the idea of a future too, with, the quote you have on top there, choose life, choose a job, choose a starter home, choose a dental insurance, choose leisure wear and matching luggage. But why would anyone want to do a thing like that? It talks about what really matters in this world in a more existentialist sense, where nothing really matters, so let's shoot heroin, and it's interesting to see how these characters evolve throughout their addiction. I think it's a really good movie to see drug use. It's also foreign. It's from Britain, and it has a great soundtrack. Like Britain's rave scene from the 90s, I'm sure, or some earlier date, and it's a fun movie. I really recommend it. You have anything to say about it, Christos?
Oh yeah, This movie does, I think, a really good job of capturing addiction. Because, like Dominik said, it shows how hard it is to actually quit an addiction. I mean, you can never really say that Renton is cured of his reliance on heroin, because even when he does go sober, he does end up falling back into it. And I think that's just a really important message, right? What this movie does is it conveys messages about addiction that, while might be fun and entertaining to watch, it really does expose the horrors of it. You know, when they're all getting high, they never look like they're having fun. To the viewer, it's like you're just uncomfortable. You see them doing stuff they don't want to do, and just overall destroying themselves, right? Like the scenes with the babies, or I won't spoil anything, but scenes with babies, scenes where like the walls are moving, it's just really scary for the viewer and for the main characters. And yet, even though it's like that, they can never stop doing it. They have to just keep going back to it, because that's the only thing their lives are amounting to right now. Like, ultimately, when you do heroin to the level that they are, I'm sure there are people that can do it and still have a functional life. It starts to consume everything around you. And if you're not careful, like Renton, it can even come back and consume your future. Also, we should mention that Trainspotting 2 is coming out soon.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Oh, you did? Yeah, they're doing Trainspotting 2, based on a sequel book. Yeah, the movie's based on a book. I haven't read the book, but I think Dominik can attest to this in saying that the book covers a lot more than the movie does. But I will always appreciate how the movie uses such beautiful cinematography. I shouldn't say beautiful, because it's not. It's grotesque. But uses such grotesque cinematography to convey messages about how addiction is so destructive.
And one thing that I forgot to say before was it also talks about, in a really cool way, about you never really lose your addiction, right? Like what Christos said, but also with the character Sick Boy, who actually goes sober from heroin successfully, he transfers his addiction to women. Then he becomes a sex addict in a sense.
Yeah.
So, like, and this happens for multiple characters, like the character of Begbie being addicted to violence and always trying to kill someone and stuff like that. There's, whether it's heroin or something else, you're always going to be addicted. Once you get to that point, it's just going to transfer onto different things. And, it's not, heroin might not necessarily be the worst addiction. Like, Begbie is, you can agree definitely that Begbie is the most villainized character in the movie, and he's clean from heroin. He's never done it. So,
well, yeah, I think this movie makes it clear, to just add on to what you're saying, is even if when you are sober, you would never be able to stop thinking about it, right? And if you do end up switching your addiction, you're still letting it control you. Like, you by doing it, even just, I should say, never do drugs, kids. But by doing it and then quitting, you still let it control you if you pick up another addiction to stop it, right? Ultimately, once you start doing it, there's no way to not let it control you. And like that, I mean, when you look at Uncut Gems, the main character just wanted to keep going for it, which is why he died. Just like how that, I don't want to spoil anything from the movie. I can't remember his name, but the character whose girlfriend dumps him. That's a similar scenario where, they don't see a reason to give it up, so they just keep going for it because that's all they have. Yeah. And ultimately, it's destructive, and it kills them in the end.
Yep. Rest in peace, that cat, though.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if there's anything more to add. I'm pretty sure this movie's on Amazon Prime. Maybe Hulu. We don't have Hulu in Europe, so I wouldn't know.
What a loser!
And it is on European Netflix. So if you're in Europe, I'm not sure about.
Or use a VPN. Yeah. I did that the other day. I wanted to watch a show and I used a VPN to watch it in another country.
Loser! God, just move.
Yes, let me drive to an airport and get on a plane right now.
It's funny how that's a ridiculous concept right now.
Yeah.
Like how before, you thought like everything was so clean, and now you get on the bus and like this is disgusting. We're dirty.
Anyways, welcome back.
Okay. So what's our problem, Christos?
Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ultra amazing prompt section. Woo!
Yeah, it's fireworks.
Today's prompt has to deal with the topic of Drusg.
Drusg.
Today's prompt is: how have movies changed their view on drugs over time? And by this I mean how have movies changed the way they represent drugs, now compared to whenever, over time. Like I just said the prompt all over again. And I mean this is, especially in the U.S. You can look at like the war on drugs, starting with like Ronald Reagan, and how everyone from McDonald's to Michael Jordan, were T-Pain, were saying don't do drugs. Drugs are bad. It's this ultimate don't ever do drugs. And how has that changed or not changed to now? Like how has our views towards addiction changed over time?
Well,
as time moves forward, as it tends to do, how has humans' perception in the movie genre of addiction changed one day to the next as time does?
Oh no, I understand clearly, Christos. Well, I think it's progress of society. Like as we as humanity tends to do.
Humanity tends to do as it progresses, as time moves forward, as it tends to do. Humanity progresses.
Yeah.
It has.
Shut it. We get to learn more about substances, not necessarily just addictive substances, but other mind-altering substances and what they do to our bodies, and what's good and what's bad for us, and what the human mind can form an addiction to. And I think this scientific approach to it has impacted the movies, right? Like, not only have movies become more realistic with substance abuse and portraying it, but they've also, not only they don't only focus on the bad stuff, right? Like
right.
Before, movies tended to be very anti-drugs because drugs are bad. That's it. Or now we look at movies like Trainspotting, right? Which isn't like too much of a modern movie. It was made in the 90s, if I'm not wrong. But still, it talks about why drugs are bad in a sense where, though the drug is portrayed in a bad sense, the most damage is done through the surrounding, right? Like the way the people around you hurt, and the people that you love hurt the most from. And this, in Trainspotting, this is captured way better in the book with Renton's relationship with his parents and it degrading because of heroin. But I think that's the most important way that addiction has been portrayed in movies recently, is it doesn't just focus on the drug, but also on the side effects in real life.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. Like you said, movies used to be just, especially American movies, have just been cut and dry. Drugs are bad, don't ever do them. But I feel like as we've progressed, we've started seeing more and more of a roller coaster. The movies will start, for example, like right now, marijuana movies, and it's just completely fine, right? Which is more progressive for us as a society. But I think what movies have been doing a lot of is showing the roller coaster behind drugs, and that you can get an extreme high, but with it, you always have to come down to an extreme low. Like in Trainspotting, you see these characters' lives just being destroyed, and a lot of it has to do with the society they're in. When you look at Uncut Gems, you can clearly see at certain points of the movies, oh my god, this guy is living the high life. He's living an amazing life. But his addiction ultimately has to bring him back down. So he gets taken from this top place and comes all the way back down again. I think a movie that does this really good is The Dirt. It's on Netflix, and it's a movie that covers the lives of Motley Crue. And, like, in the beginning, you're like, oh my god, drugs are awesome. Look, it's making them rock stars. I want to be a rock star. And then over the movie, you see their lives just like, oofa. That is not good. Who is, God, I can't remember his name. The dude with the blonde hair. He's fat now. Wow.
No, it's interesting to bring up The Dirt because it does it in a very clear way how drugs are bad. It's not,
but it shows, like, the positive effects they can have. Like, ultimately, without their drugs, they would not have had the career that they had. They would not have made the music that they did. I think there's one clear-cut scene in the movie that captures it perfectly. And it's in, like, the beginning stages of their career. They stay at a hotel. And at that hotel is also staying Ozzy Osbourne, who is a god. How has he not died yet? I do not know. I think if you were to just take some of his cells, you could probably find a cure of corona because, he has eaten a bat and survived from getting rabies when the bat bit him. But that's...
it is... His blood is the vaccine to all disease.
That is true.
That scientifically proven fact.
Says so right in the Holy Bible. Also, fun fact about Ozzy Osbourne. He's actually very religious and will hand carve so many crucifixes in the houses in which he lives in that his house always have zero resale value. But that's besides the point.
What?
Yeah. It's really funny. But in the scene, basically, they're chilling at a pool, and Ozzy Osbourne walks out with only, like, a silk robe on, and starts going insane because he's high. And all the members...
Vanity!
I'm sorry. He goes starkingly insane because he's high. And Motley Crue's like, oh my god, that is awesome, let's do it. So they start like trying to mimic what he does. He starts mooning people, and like at one point he pisses on the ground, drinks it up, and starts snorting ants there. And they're like, oh my god, we want to do that too. But even though he's incapable of saying this because he's high, Ozzy Osbourne is trying to convey a message to these guys saying, like, get out while you can. You don't want to live this life, right? He's trying so hard to tell these people that he sees them himself in, that they don't want to live this life that will destroy them. And yet he's so far into the drugs that his mind has deteriorated to the point where he can't, and he's just making it seem cooler. He stands as a reason not to, and yet he's more of a reason to these people. And I think that's just a really insane image. I'm personally a huge Ozzy Osbourne fan. I like his music, I like his work, and ultimately this cult of personality that he creates from his drugs is, well, almost as addicting as the drugs themselves.
Yeah, and another scene that I really think is really cool in representing that, like, the negative side effect, the worldly negative side effects of drugs is when, that scene where they take us through the day of Motley Crue, or like the drummer, right? And
a fun fact is Greek. Tommy Lee is very Greek, but continue.
After, like, that happens after a lot of really bad stuff happens. Mm-hmm. This isn't, we're not really spoiling anything because all of this is based on real life. So after the characters get in the car crash and one of the members dies, we get this montage of what happens throughout the day of the drummer of Motley Crue. Yeah. And you just keep telling yourself, dude, stop.
And like there's
like multiple points in the montage where it's like he can stop, but he chooses not to. And it ruins his relationship with his wife, with his children, just everything. And yeah, you're like physically cringing. Like, you just stop. Just stop it.
There's a lot of times where you're like, oh my god, I wish that was my life. But then, like, you see how, like, it really destroys them, and how like doing it partying every single hour of every single day will destroy you. Like I remember one scene that does it really well is one member of the band just got done having sex with a woman, and you just see like such like that wasn't fun at all, such disappointment on his face, and then the woman walks out and it's another band member's fiance. Right, like it kind of like. Just like the expression on everyone's faces in that moment, it's like, yeah, that's Motley Crue. This is what drugs do to you.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Well, no, okay, so that brings me into my next movie, right? There's a lot of movies now that are showing the good sides, which is good. You can't have the good without the negative. You can't have the yin without the yang. You can't have the light side without the dark side. We came with the same analogy at the same time. That was awesome. But having a good trip, an adventure in psychedelics does a great job of portraying. You know, there is a lot of fun to have in like LSD and similar psychedelics. What it does is that it paints a brighter picture, a more fun picture of these drugs, while reminding you, hey, you know, there are these things called bad trips, and they do suck. But ultimately, there's a lot of like. I don't want to say philosophy, because honestly, if your philosophy comes from a drugs, did you really come to it yourself?
Wow.
I'm kidding. But what it does is it really highlights that there are a lot of fun and good to have that isn't necessarily life-destroying, and it walks you through the lives of a ton of celebrities that have done LSD in the past and their good experiences with it. And honestly, having that level of, hey, you know, drugs aren't terrible is reassuring to people. And it does a lot to alleviate the societal pressures. Like we talked about with Trainspotting, the effects of the drugs would not have been not nearly as bad if the society around them was more accepting and just nicer to these people. And yet they felt that your only escape was through these drugs. But by having movies more and more like like A Good Trip, which is on Netflix, by the way, then you change the way society perceives it.
Yeah, it's also, like I said earlier, it's not necessarily about showing the good side, more so about showing it objectively.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's more of an educational purpose than a discouraging purpose. Whether you choose to do or don't do a substance, you should, you know, whether it's even alcohol or nicotine or whatever.
You know,
like
the pros and the cons, right? Like the effects.
Yeah, you should look into what it does to your body, if it's legal or not.
And that's especially prevalent now, where a lot of people are resorting to using substances to help with the corona strain, which, I mean, you do you. I think ultimately you do whatever you need to do, or what you think is right and or fun to help you pass the time, right? But what like Dominik is saying, the purpose of a lot of these movies is just to provide education through entertainment, and that there's a good side and a bad side to whatever choices you make. And sometimes those goods can outweigh the bad, but a lot of times you get schizophrenia that outweighs the good.
Yeah, and
I shouldn't say get schizophrenia, but yeah, continue.
We shouldn't blindly trust. I think that's a lot of what these movies are trying to discourage against. You know, they don't like you have Trainspotting and all of those. Is a lot of addiction is in blind trust. It's not doing the research that you should do before, you know, having your body. And this doesn't necessarily need to be just for substances.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know, tattoo. You should think about
everything. Everything you do. Like, even when you get into a car, you need to weigh the risks of, you know, I could get into an accident. Do I really need to be doing this now? Everything you do, choosing when to do your homework, when to not do your homework, when to study, when to not study, when to eat, when to not eat. Every choice you make has a ramification for the future.
100%. And that's what a good part of what portraying substances in movies has become is it's not just discouraging, right? Like, if you had movies telling you, don't get a tattoo, never get a tattoo.
Never.
It's really bad. You'd be looking at them like, what? That's dumb. There's so many
Honestly, people would be getting tattoos just to say, screw you.
Yeah, it's really good. It's where if you have a movie that's telling you, okay, if you get a tattoo, here's the positive side effects, like whatever looks cool or yada yada yada. But also there's a chance that some of the ink might collect in your lymph nodes and stuff like that, or you might get an infection, whatever. It shows you a more objective side of the issue. I don't know if the objective side doesn't really make sense, but if it shows you a more objective view, and that's what's been happening with addiction in movies, too, especially substances, is more of an objective view.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much everything. Just to recap, you can find the movies have become more educational towards the ups and downs, but ultimately don't blindly trust everything you see on a movie screen. The Dirt can be found on Netflix. A Good Trip in Psychedelics can also be found on Netflix. Any final remarks?
Don't do drugs, kids. They're yeah, no, not really. I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah. A final message. I mean, if you want to do drugs, weigh the pros and cons and judge it for yourself. Ultimately, you're the master of your own universe.
Legal or not, this is not just about
We will not condone the use of illegal substances.
Yeah. Don't vape unless you know what it does to your bodies, kids.
The Juul is not cool.
Yeah, dude. Why would you have heavy metals in your lungs, dude? It's not a rock concert.
You know it can explode.
So yeah, kids, be smart. That's it.
Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in for this episode of the Socially Distant Untitled Podcast. Next week's prompt will be